All right. Welcome to Heart of Entrepreneurship, where my longtime BFF and coach, Dave Cashin, and I talk about all the things related to love, personal growth, spirituality, vis-a-vis in the life of an entrepreneur. Um, so last week we talked about emotions. We tried to do sort of emotions for dummies, our version of it. And today we're going to continue a version of that conversation. We're going to talk about something very related to emotions, which is resisting them, and kind of go deep on that because I think there's a lot I've learned about myself in that process and continue to, but I think it's also a big part of what shapes us in our decisions and how we run businesses and all those things. But before we do that, Dave, do you want to just recap last week, maybe for someone who's hearing this for the first time?
Sure. I think we started with you asking what are emotions, and I cited a phrase that I heard from Diana Chapman from Conscious Leadership, which was to think of emotion as energy in motion. And I think I like that definition because it sort of recognizes that it's a pretty physical experience. It's like energy. It's actually like energy moving through your body. And for so many entrepreneurs and business people in general, we just kind of walk around mostly focused on our heads. So we talked a bit about how tuning into your emotions is about tuning into your body, feeling that energy moving through your body and starting to recognize, okay, which emotion is that? Mm-hmm. And we talked about some of the core emotions, joy, excitement, anger, sadness, fear, shame, and guilt, and how each of the emotions sort of is kind of a different energy, brings different wisdom and intelligence, and how so many of us have learned to, first of all, that emotions are messy and not useful in business and bad, and the need to unlearn that. And because we actually are human beings and we don't stop being human when we go to work, it's important to understand the role of emotions, to learn to recognize them, and then ultimately to accept them as they are because they are. Like so many other things, we'll probably talk about throughout this podcast. The difference between being kind of at our best and in flow and in presence and not is much of the time is simply whether we accept and allow what is
Right.
or resist it. But emotions are a particular flavor of that, which a lot of us learn in early years, like this certain emotion is bad, or it's not safe, or it's not okay to feel this, whether that's anger on the one extreme or excitement on the other, right? A lot of us, when we get loud as kids, our parents are like, no, 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 calm down, that's too much. And we learn, oh,
Right.
I don't want to be too much, I don't want to be too excited. Or, like I shared in my case, there wasn't much anger expressed. And so I just learned, oh, okay, anger is like a bad thing. It's something that less civilized people do. So it's really useful to recognize which of the emotions you tend to repress, deny, because sometimes we get so practiced in repressing and denying that we're not even actively doing it anymore. It's not like, oh, that's anger, I don't want to feel that. It's our defenses are so well formed that we don't even recognize it's happening. So there's a whole
Right.
process of learning to become sensitive again, which is
Mm.
funny for me. I'm a particularly, I think, sensitive human,
Yeah.
which may be why I do what I do. And I think I learned early on, both through some messages around being a boy, and like, oh, boys don't cry, boy, not even like explicit, but just sort of implicit, messages from around. I don't think I heard that from my parents, but there's a,
Yeah.
there tend to be
Society.
gender biases, yeah,
Yeah.
societal
Sure.
gender biases. And then I think it was just painful. Like there was a lot, parents were divorced. There was a bunch of
Right.
stuff that um, felt at least painful and overwhelming to feel. So I think I just learned to kind of tamp it down and shut it down. And I've had to go through a real process of um, unblocking feelings and learning to feel them
Right.
again. It's helped me get more clear about
And
what I want and what's happening.
yeah, and you were saying anger's, sadness has been one for me that's I've pushed away for most of my life. We talked a little bit about this, but can you recap, like, what are the dangers of not being in touch with your emotions for entrepreneurs, and what are the benefits of
Yeah.
being in touch with them?
Yeah, I love that because it's like, okay, well, yeah, what does this mean for founders, right? Why is this relevant? And I had a client recently be like, oh my God, like, I can't believe I was ever trying to build a company without these tools. Like, it can be that transformational. So, what are the benefits? Again, because we're human and we have emotions, um, if we deny and repress them, there's this notion what you resist persists. We can talk more about that. So one of the advantages of recognizing and feeling is you don't end up in these moods and these like perpetual, almost every founder I know is stressed
Right.
and overwhelmed. And a lot of that is actually because they're resisting fear. They don't want to actually feel the fear. So a few things happen when you resist an emotion. Let's just talk about fear. One is we go into our minds almost as a way to escape feeling the feeling, and
Mm-hmm.
then we ruminate or we spin or we overanalyze, right? Again, lots and lots of clients, show up and they're like, I'm overthinking everything, or I want to make decisions faster, but I feel stuck and I'm just constantly, spinning on decisions and like I can't access my intuition or I don't trust it and really what's in the way of that is not feeling feelings. We're actually emotional decision makers. We may have talked about this. I'll just cite it quickly. There was some experiment or research basically into people who had brain injuries, could no longer feel their feelings, and it took them hours and hours to decide like which color pen to use, because we actually make decisions emotionally and then we rationalize them. And
Right.
so if we don't have access to our emotions, it takes so much longer to make decisions. We get stuck in our heads. Also, emotions are themselves a source of intelligence. So, like, example of, a team that was making an acquisition that looked really, really good on paper. It just made logical sense. And somebody spoke up in a meeting and was like, I just want to say, they had a culture that allowed this and welcomed it. Like, I noticed that constriction in my stomach. I noticed a little bit of fear every time we talk about this acquisition. And someone else was like, actually, me too. And so like, okay, hold on, let's slow down a little bit. And they dug deeper and found fraud, all right, and didn't
Wow.
go through the acquisition. So there's a real like kind of
Knowing.
knowing. It's like another source of intelligence. And honestly, that really got me because I for a long time I was like, happiness good, sadness bad. Like
Right.
let me just maximize happiness. And then when I learned that emotions were a source of intelligence, I really value intelligence. I was like, oh, well, I don't want to, miss out on one source of them. We talked a bit about the different kind of flavors of that. Like sadness is showing what wants to be let go of. So, like, if a team doesn't feel sadness, or if a CEO or founder doesn't feel sadness, they'll likely keep too many projects going or keep too many people on the team. They won't let go. Anger is boundary energy. It's helping you get clear about what you want and what's okay with you and your values. So there's a real, with each emotion, fear is telling you, okay, there's something to learn, something to pay attention to here. Um, and joy, is like there's something that wants to be celebrated.
Right.
And that, again, I find, an excitement, something wants to be created. I find most teams, you know, over index on the quote unquote, and it's important that we put in quotes because this is part of the issue, negative stuff and like actually block
Fear and
appreciation,
anger are more
joy,
common.
celebration.
Yeah.
Totally.
And the other thing, one other thing we just talked about, and then we can move forward is, not only are founders human, but everybody they're leading is human also. And the presenting issue, and this was a very, the wisdom for me has been very valuable because similar to you, I value intelligence. I'm like, oh, what's this? Oh, wow. Oh my God, I didn't see this thing. And I have unlocks, as you know, all the time from things that are coming from feelings now. But then with my team, someone walks in and they're like, this process is broken, and and then if you can actually be present enough to feel what someone's feeling or understand, you go, wait, you're saying this, but you really just seem angry about this right now. And I say that all the time, where I just name what I think they're feeling, and
Yes.
it's changed my leadership completely. Not only obviously people appreciate being seen in that way, but then they go, well, yeah, I am angry because I'm the only one who's doing the work here. Oh, I see, I get it now. So this has nothing to do with the spreadsheet thing you're talking about, and everything to do with, and I think the flip of it now, I didn't notice it when I was younger and I was an early founder, but now when I don't do that, if I'm not present and I start talking about something going back and forth, and someone's like, you're like, wait, why aren't we getting anywhere in this? And it's like, oh, because there's a bunch of feelings here that aren't being brought to the surface.
Yeah, our minds tend to overcomplicate almost everything. So, like, simplicity on the other side of complexity is almost always there's just some feeling that's not being felt.
Right.
And once it's felt, the issue is easily resolved. So, if you're spinning and taking a long time individually or, as like you said, with your team, um, I've been fond recently of saying an emotion is worth 1,000 words,
I love
to
that.
kind of, spin off that phrase. And then coach I really respect, Tara from Art of Accomplishment, has this quote that unfelt feelings are the glue that keep unwanted patterns in place.
Mm.
And I think that's another real. I'm finding it more and more even lately as I lean more into helping clients recognize what's the feeling they're not feeling, like lifelong patterns. Oh, I'm conflict avoidant, or even patterns
Right.
that seem like
Right.
they're beliefs, right? No, oh,
Sure.
I feel like
I'm a
I'm not
nice
good enough,
guy.
or I'm a nice guy, or but like a big one, I have so many founders who, and I think there's a human film at a deep level feel like they're an imposter or I'm not good enough,
Right.
and they're like, like, oh, could you let go of that belief? And they're like, well, I can't, like, I can't,
Right.
and it's interesting, like, why can't you let go of that belief? Can you see that you're good enough? Can you, and often when they start to recognize, well, I'm scared to let it go because it's been driving me. Okay, that's a useful insight, but until they actually feel the fear, it doesn't
Right.
go.
Right. Say it one more time. Unfelt feelings. I'm going to write it down. Unfelt.
Unfelt feelings are the glue that keep unwanted patterns in place.
I love it. So let's talk about, this was going to be kind of about resistance, and I guess I'll start with the way I think about it, which is like I have Mila, my beautiful daughter, who's 18 months old, and none of the two big kids did this, by the way. We have two older kids, but Mila loves my wife Dee, and to the point where, and she's kind of at the height of this sort of separation thing. If I walk in the room, I'm her dad, and the older two kids, they weren't necessarily happy. Like, they were totally fine with me. We'd hand the kids back and forth, no big deal. But Mila, if you hand Mila to me, she gets upset. She starts crying.
If Dee
Um,
hands her to you,
if Dee hands her to me, or I walk in the room and she knows that Dee's leaving, maybe, and it's time for me to put her to bed or whatever it is, right? And I've been doing this stuff a long time, and she cry, and I'll say, you're really sad, you're leaving mom. She'll cry. It lasts 25 seconds. It's a little scary and painful for everybody, immediately. Even if my parents or somebody are like, oh, she's crying. No, don't make her cry. Don't make her cry. You'll see this, and we'll come back to that. But then she's totally fine. She's like, I want to read this book. And so I always think of this as kids. The energy comes, they express it, and it's done. It's over.
yes.
And
Well,
by
and
the way,
they'll go from total temper tantrum, crying, angry to laughing and playing within 40 seconds.
yeah, exactly. And so I always start there going, oh, okay, well, they like, wow. So they move through these things. Most adults and even older kids now, they don't. So I guess, what is resistance? And let's start with, like, I don't know why it happens. And
Yeah, I think we somewhere between Mila's age and probably 8 years old, and certainly our age, quote unquote, learn that certain feelings are not welcome, are not safe, are not good to have, right? So we're alluding to this a bit, right? Oh, don't, oh, calm down, right? Oh, okay. If I get too excited, it's basically like what gives me positive attention from mom and dad and what gives me negative attention from mom and dad or caretakers.
right,
That's probably the core of it, right? It's like, oh, um, when I cry, they seem annoyed, right? because
Right.
it's annoying when the little
And childhood trauma or childhood, not trauma, but childhood patterns or whatever, they're almost memed at this point as a joke.
I
Like,
know.
eh,
Yes.
but I think it is important to call out that like whoever your caretakers are, probably not because they're bad people. In
No,
some
not at
cases,
all.
maybe whatever. But they had their own issues with certain feelings from the
They
road.
learned it
Like,
from their parents, and they
yeah,
learned
and
it
they're
from their
whatever, right?
parents,
But like,
and
so now, I see this all the time. Is like now a kid cries, a boy, let's say, a boy cries, and I mean, it certainly wasn't uncommon when we were kids, and even now, I like, oh, don't cry, you're tough.
right. Be tough. Stop
With the
crying.
best, but by the way, with the best intentions from the parent, they
Right. I want
want
them
their
to be
kid to feel
strong, and I want them
better.
to be resilient and have
Right.
grit.
Or like I've seen a lot of parents in the same scenario of, D and I with Mila, dad will hand the girl right back to the mom and go, she's crying. I don't want her to cry.
Right.
Go back to mom. Go back. Hey, I'm going to, you put her to bed. Like, I mean, I've seen that entire process happen where,
Well, in that case, she might learn, oh, sadness is a tool I can
yeah,
use to get what I want. And people do that, right? In relationship where instead of just communicating what they really want, oh, they get sad, and that creates
right.
the
But I think it's
reaction.
important to call out this resistance, like, it really comes in childhood and it comes, not blaming anyone's parents and even your, like, but it comes as a sort of a natural, I don't know,
Yeah.
byproduct of being a human, probably, where somebody else is like, "Yeah, dude, something and it's everyone's household is different and everyone's method is different and that's
Yeah,
where
like
it's
if
sort
you
of
grew up in a household like I did, where there was not much conflict and not much I mean, my parents got divorced. I never heard them fight once,
oh wow, I didn't
prior
know
to
that.
that, right? And all of a sudden, so like that's one version is like, oh, there wasn't conflict explicit, there wasn't anger expressed. So how would I learn, to express? So a lot, one version of it is we just sort of inherit it, from our parents. Like I don't, my mom still to this day, if I'm like, she's like, how are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm kind of feeling sad today. She's like, what's wrong?
You're right,
Right.
right,
Oh, well, no, but things are so good. But you have such a wonderful, like she's trying to manage
yeah,
my sadness ultimately because she doesn't want to feel what she has to feel when I feel sad, right? And
right.
um, so I think that we come by it honestly, as
And
kids.
and and that and I think the other thing is I mean this, but I think it's worth calling out for like for most people because of that it's so unconscious.
It is,
It's
yeah,
not like
totally,
someone sits there
totally.
and like I think the average
I'm
founder
going to
listening to
resist
this
my sadness today.
or would
Yeah,
say, oh yeah, I tend to resist anger. I tend to like I think at least when I started this work, I think most people it's like, no, I'm not a sad person. Like I don't get sad. What are you talking about? Or like you probably like I'm not an angry person. Like that's just not who I am. And I think that's where most people start in this journey. And I think it's just
yeah.
important to call it out because it doesn't. If you said to somebody randomly, I think you resist. They'd be like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
What do you mean I resist something?
So if you're intrigued and embarking on this journey, one place to look at life and how you react to other people when they're having feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Another coach, Joe Hudson, recently said, if you want to know who was not allowed to cry, look at who reacts when babies cry on an airplane. Right? There's some people who are just like, oh God, they're
Stop
just like
crying. Yeah.
visibly annoyed, because it's like, oh, if I don't let myself feel that feeling, I get annoyed when other people feel the feeling. So that's
Right.
one place to look is just what annoys you, what feelings annoy you when other people feel them. That's a good sign that you probably don't allow yourself to feel it and you're resisting it in some way. Um, and then, yeah, if you reflect honestly, you can probably see a pattern of, okay, yeah, I let myself feel a certain level of joy, some sadness, maybe if somebody dies or something like obviously, a really
Right.
sad movie, but there's not much anger in my life um,
Or just the things I think you say you're not. I mean, I think that's a very easy,
mm, I'm
or that
not an angry
annoys you in
person.
other
I'm not, yeah,
people, or if you're a parent and in your kids, what annoys you, like, oh, my kid's so angry all the time, or like I'm not an angry person, or I don't. I think any of those sort of because I think most founders are intelligent enough to and they'll say things like that. I don't. Yeah, I don't tend to get sad. It just doesn't really happen. Like I think I would have said that. I still
Right.
kind of feel like
It's
I
just
say
not me. I'm
it.
a happy guy. I'm just
Yeah.
I'm a happy guy.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and I think so anyway, okay, so that's how people kind of it shows up. That's how it manifests. Presumably, if everyone
Yeah,
kind of developed
there's
it,
probably two flavors of projection we could talk about as a way to, again, sort of self-diagnose, for lack of a better word.
right?
One is the first one we said, if someone else does it and you get annoyed. The other is if someone else does it and you judge it. Or
Yeah,
even if you judge it in yourself, like, oh, I keep getting angry. What's wrong with me? Oh
right.
God, I have a bad temper. I shouldn't get angry. Or God, I'm getting sad. Ugh, why am I so weak? So if you judge it, you're probably, not
Yeah, and
probably.
I think the way it's shown up for me and others, I oftentimes you'll say like people shouldn't be angry.
Right.
If you ask someone like, "What's the thing that you think?" Oh, yeah, people shouldn't be. So, and that's so what. So when we say resistance, what are the flavors of the ways people? So let's assume you develop it in childhood. Assume it's not conscious either. Like,
Yeah.
what are the ways that people resist?
Well, yeah, we could maybe break it down to sort of conscious and unconscious and um,
Let's start with unconscious. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, essentially it's like repression and denial, like literally, it's so repressed that you don't know it's there, although it probably leaks out now and then when you're,
Hmm.
didn't get a good night's sleep or you're really upset about something, you're really, we could say below the line, right, in a state of threat, it probably leaks out. But yeah, it's basically just repressed. And actually, like, if you think about it, it takes sort of energy and like physical bracing to stop an emotion that's coming through. So we end up getting kind of calcified in our bodies.
Hmm.
Like our heart will feel a little bit more like heavier closed if we're constantly resisting sadness. But yeah, it's essentially repression and denial unconsciously. Like I don't even know I'm feeling it. And then consciously, I think the most common pattern is the escape into the head.
Mm.
It's just like anytime I or somebody else even like has a bit of this feeling, I will go into my mind and try to figure out something. Oh,
Right.
let me figure out how to solve this problem instead of just be with the feeling. I think that's probably the most common. Distractions would be the other one, right? I'll go, have a glass of wine, have a beer,
Right.
smoke a joint,
Play games on my mobile
play
phone,
games on my
exercise,
phone, yeah, scroll X or
keep my
Twitter.
calendar really busy.
Yeah, I
Not that
mean,
I do that, but
yeah, I have a friend who keeps his calendar really. Yeah, I love that you just said that. There's this quote that just popped to mind. Like, most of man's struggles come from his inability to sit quietly alone in a room,
yeah.
or woman's struggles, her ability. Um, and I think the reason we tend to have such a hard time being still is because there's some feelings we've been avoiding feeling that once we get still, it starts to arise. So, I mean, if you think about founders who are some of the busiest people I know, probably in the world, like it's interesting to wonder how much of their busyness is just avoiding some feeling they don't want to feel.
Yeah. Well, and I think for me, like the real case study I've had in the last 2 weeks, as you know, is like I like shifted. I'm the chairman and founder of all these companies in the studio. I'm not the CEO, and I was kind of in the first half of the year I was acting like a fractional president. I was effectively in the companies doing a bunch of stuff, and I said, "Hey guys, this isn't. I want to shift." And of course, I was nervous about that, and then everyone's like, "Great, good job, Jess." Like nobody cared. I mean, they cared, but they were all supportive, right? And then I'm like, this week I'm like, and last one like my calendar has been pretty empty, and like some anxiety showed up and some sadness is showing, like they're showing up together, and I'm like, whoa, this is new. And I can almost feel what I've been running from for so long. And even the other funny thing was, I was telling this to somebody this week, like the lies we tell ourselves. Like when I was at Ampush and I was running the business as the CEO, it was really easy to say like, I'm the CEO. This is my first company. It's all my livelihood. I must stay busy in order for it to be successful, to make money, to like feed my like. But now the setup I have is like there's people running all the businesses, and it's not true. Like it's just objectively false that I have to stay busy for these things to do well. And I can, but the feeling is just as present as it was at Ampush, which is if I'm like not worthwhile if I'm not busy, or I'm like these things come up and like, oh, if I don't keep myself busy, there's a problem.
That's it. I love that example. I'm not worthwhile if I'm not busy. That's the belief pattern. And, frankly, for many years, I would have mostly focused on, well, can you see how that's not true? How that's not true for someone else? Really try to dismantle the belief, which is still useful to do. Like, what evidence do you have that you are worthwhile even without being busy?
Right.
Um, and since this episode is about emotions, what I'm recognizing is if you don't feel it's probably shame that is kind of holding that belief in place, um, and stop resisting it and like fully allow yourself to feel it, it probably won't go away. You won't shift
Right.
that pattern. And it's amazing how quickly it almost feels miraculous if you actually probably for the first time in most people's lives, because who wants to feel shame? We spend most of our lives pushing it away, resisting it. Fully allow yourself to feel the shame without believing the story. By the way, that's the common pattern is like we don't feel the feeling, but we believe the story or the
Right.
belief. You want to swap it so you see through the belief or stop believing it, and at the same time like fully feel literally like the physical sensations of it. Like, oh, the shame is often like this hunched over, like small, want to hide, escape, um, feeling. For me, as I tune into it, it's like hard to breathe. Like my throat closes up, my chest and stomach constrict. But if I can allow all that and allow myself to feel it, the shame tends to move through and that pattern can shift.
Yeah.
And um,
How do you coach? So you obviously, you work with founders across the spectrum of self-awareness and even types. Like you work with Fortune
yeah,
500. Like you work with so many different people. How do you get people to start even being aware of the resistance and noticing, and then how do you help coach them to work through it?
I mean, let's see. So the classic like emotional intelligence sort of work is first around identifying and recognizing a feeling that's happening, which if we don't recognize it, we tend to skip over it and essentially resist it or actively resist it. So part of it is just like I think we talked in the last episode about like taking the elevator down from your head to your heart or to your body. So just starting to pay attention to like what's happening in here, because you have a body and it has sensations and feelings. Um, and then if you start to do that, you will notice that you do resist most feelings. I'll just assert that from my experience, most people resist most of their feelings, even joy and excitement, sometimes even more joy and excitement.
Right.
Um, so it might be just a useful place to start. Let's just assume any feeling you have, you're at least partially resisting fully feeling, because that's just what we tend to do or tend to
Right.
learn. But I
And,
can,
and I think we said this last time, but I just want to say it because I think it's relevant. Is the pipe, if you will, of feelings is like one pipe.
yeah,
And so if you resist sadness, you probably also resist joy because it's like the pipe will. My mental model is like your pipe
clocked.
is feeling is your resistance pipe is one pipe, regardless of the
Yes.
feeling coming through.
Yeah, because it is even, I mean, to some degree, even the distinct feelings that we described are just conceptual. Like there's some kind of energy that's trying to move through your body,
Mm,
and if you block it, you block it. So I think that's an important point. We don't get to pick and choose, it seems, really. Like we can pretend to, but like you're not
right.
going to feel your full aliveness and joy if you don't feel your full rage and terror. And so and I can generally feel it now in my body. Like there's some kind of bracing against, again,
Mm,
because the energy is wanting to move and it will just naturally move, like you said, in your 18-month old. So there's some kind of way that we brace against it. And honestly, a lot of like chronic physical issues are really, I think, just chronic bracing against feeling. The last line of defense is our jaw, right? It's like, oh, don't say that, right? Don't speak it. Don't cry. Don't cry out, right? Don't.
right.
Um, and so, uh, you know, sometimes like people like will feel this like grinding teeth or jaw pain, but there is a real bracing against,
Right.
and then. yeah,
So,
we'll
but
talk
when you
in a,
first start working with someone,
yeah.
I guess it's getting them to notice just an emotion first, I
Yeah,
assume,
just
before they can even
recognize,
notice the
oh,
resistance.
like, I find it useful to look at the physical sensations because it is a physical experience. It's like what's happening in your body. Sometimes people can access that more easily than even the feeling. Like, oh, I notice constriction in my chest, or in my belly, or in my throat, or like a tightening in my neck and shoulders. And we may have talked about this. But conscious leadership has a kind of a map that I find useful of like, oh, neck and shoulders, likely that's anger,
Right.
right? Oh, stomach constriction, likely that's fear, right? Pressure behind the eyes, constriction in chest, likely that's sadness.
Right.
Um,
So step
and
one is I guess it sounds like is well, it's
physical,
actually yeah, it's like noticing your body. I mean, I was gonna say maybe there's a prereq step, and I'm even thinking about our journey together of like just slowing someone down enough to actually check in, and like that's that's like the
yeah, that's
prereq step.
we used to do these like we call the unarguable check-ins, which was like thought, feeling, sensation,
Yeah.
right? And the first third of that is what most people do most of the time, right? So if you're just constantly in your head focusing on your thoughts, you're going to ignore and resist feelings. So I like that. Just first check in. Okay, yes, I have this thought. What's happening in my body? What am I
Right.
feeling? And see if you could name it. Oh, I think there's some
Yeah, like could
sadness
you
here.
quiet down for 1 minute and just slow down and try to take a few breaths and feel into your body or feel into something? Then you notice something.
Yes.
Shoulders are
Now,
tight.
so it's not so abstract or conceptual. Let's just invite listeners, do that. Do that right now,
All right.
right? Bring your attention down from your head and just notice what's actually occurring in your body. If it helps, you could scan your head, your throat, your neck and shoulders, your chest, your stomach, and just see, what are you actually noticing? Jesse, what are you noticing?
I feel like a little tightness in my chest. I have like a little ball there.
Hmm.
My shoulders feel a little pulled on.
Yeah, so given the map, that there's likely some sadness and some anger. And notice if you're like fully welcoming them in or if there's any resistance, if you're bracing against, pushing away.
How do I know? Like, so if I slow down, then I feel some things in my body.
Yeah,
How do I know when I'm resisting?
one thing that can help is just to like exaggerate the contrast. So just go ahead and resist. Like go
Mm.
away. I don't want to feel you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And just notice what actually occurs.
My body gets tight.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Yeah,
we have to get tight to stop feeling, right? We have to
right.
constrict against them. And, ironically, they'll likely intensify when you do that. And then try the opposite. Welcome, like a guest in your home that you're truly excited to welcome in. Welcome sadness, welcome constriction, that ball sensation in your chest. Welcome pulling sensation in your shoulders.
Yep.
And one thing you may notice is that the actual experience of it shifts. This kind of blew my mind when I heard this from Joe Hudson. That the experience of an emotion plus resistance is actually a fundamentally different experience than the emotion without resistance.
Mm.
It's just that we tend to resist the same emotions all the time. Because we resist them, they feel painful. Because they feel painful, we resist them. So we're stuck
Right.
in a loop, not realizing that, like so many things, that we're the one creating it. And so I love that experiment because I find when I actually, and there's a caveat here, which is I can't welcome the feeling in order to get rid of it
Right.
because a lot of clients try that, and man, I've tried that so many times over the years of like, oh God, and I used to get depressed, for many years. So when sadness arises, it scares me. I'm like, oh God, am I sinking back into depression? Am I gonna, have my aliveness? And so, for a long time when I learned this, I'm like, okay, welcome sadness.
Right.
Well,
Right.
welcome, go away, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, versus, he said, like Joe will say, like, could you actually look forward to being sad? Could you
Yeah.
look forward to being terrified?
Right.
Yeah, which, one thing I find funny is like how many people go see really scary movies,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? Or sad movies, and it's like some part of us wants to feel that, but other, often we're just like, no, I don't
Right.
want that right now. It's distracting.
What about so the the welcoming is interesting. I think it's harder to kind of hold on to. I think the CLG stuff, like the conscious leadership stuff around healthily expressing
Yeah, that's a good.
your emotions, like that like worked for me well, especially early on. I like noticed I was angry, and then for whatever reason my car, there's no one else around in my car, and I'm like, oh, I can like slam this, I can scream at the top of my lungs.
Yes.
And even that I think is really difficult for people. It's like people feel awkward doing it,
Oh,
but
it's
like it tends to be pretty valuable.
Yeah, that's a good. So there's kind of the inner welcoming where you just, take a posture of welcome, even like love. Could you love the feelings? And then, you know, one way I think about like if that sort of if there's a lot of repressed feelings that may not quite be sufficient, and so the conscious leadership talks about the importance of like can you match the inner energy with outer energy
Mm-hmm.
and outer expression, typically in the form of sound and or movement, right? I mean, there's a reason people ultimately fight, right, or yell when they're angry. Like the unhealthy reactive version of it, it does come out, right? Or throw
Right.
staples across a room, or it's like there's a there's a sound or and movement that the energy tends to kind of want to be expressed as, but we tend to think our options are I can be, let's just take anger, which is probably the most common example. People think I can either be violent and reactive and uncivilized and
Right.
cause pain and damage, or I can just hold it in, right? And to your point, like a third option is go express it in a healthy, safe way. So
Right.
I have, and then this is Anna Chapman's idea from Conscious Leadership. I got the idea from, I now have a wiffle ball bat in my bedroom, and we're in our different house here, and so I have one here too. So in each of my bedrooms, I have a wiffle ball bat, and now and then I'll just go and while screaming, because movement and sound, I'll be like, ah, and I'll just bash my pillow. It's safe. I'm not hurting the pillow. I'm not hurting myself. I'm not
Right.
hurting anyone. I'll tend to, tell the family, like, guys, I'm going to scream for a little bit, or I'll do it when no one's home, or like you said, people do it in their car. And I'm amazed, even just a few minutes. First of all, most people their entire lives have never spent 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes expressing a feeling
Of
like
anger,
purposely,
yeah, or of any of
or
them.
or fear. Like I had a client recently who was going through something really intense and scary, and I was like, okay, let's stop talking about it and let's just shake. Right, like zebras do after like they're done fleeing the lion. Like literally, we're just shaking hips and our hands, and it's amazing, right? Like, well, it's like off-gassing the fear, or sadness. Just like go all the way into it, let yourself feel it, even like if you need to crumple up into a little fetal position on the floor, right? These are like super uncomfortable, weird, things that most humans don't do. It's not in our society. It's not normal. Again, your 18-month-old will do it, right?
Yeah.
Right? She might just crumple to the floor in sadness,
Yeah.
and boom, it moved, and or wail and temper tantrums, and then it moves. There's a wisdom that she's accessing. It's just intuitive. Like I have this anger, I need to move it. I'm gonna have a temper tantrum and bang my
Right.
arms and legs on the floor and scream. So in some way, it's like, can we get back to our, being little kids and the natural wisdom of
The primal
the
instincts.
primal instinct
And
to
even yeah, I've noticed.
express
I mean, with
feeling.
my son, I try to show him, or like I'll just let him punch my hands,
Hmm.
it's amazing how fast it brings him down, and how
Yes.
much if he's getting resistance, if he's getting pushback, that does the opposite, obviously. Or even like one I've started to do, if I could see it coming, or if even like he's being mean to his sister, I'll just be like, hey, just go take a lap around our driveway.
Yeah.
Like just run a couple times and just let that whatever that energy is, like let it,
Yeah. Though
um,
running tends to move fear more than anger. Like
yeah,
anger, it's generally helpful. Some kind of more like, "Arr,"
yeah,
like bound, no, stop, like that
yeah.
kind of energy. But yes, and exercise is a tricky one because people can either use it to sort of feel and express or to distract and avoid.
Mm-hmm.
I often have used exercise to distract and avoid
Mm.
myself. Um, and, it's probably the best distract. If you're going to distract yourself, it's probably one of the more
At least
healthy
you're
ones.
real fit while you're doing
Yeah, exactly.
it.
There's other
I've
benefits.
I found it like weightlifting for me
Well,
is
the motion of that is closer
yeah.
to like,
I like I'll
right? Like,
feel stuff come out, or
yeah.
I've had emotional experiences that'll like pop out of nowhere in the middle of a
And
weightlifting thing.
I will say too, if people like, I don't even know where to start. Anger tends to be a good place to start because it tends to
Mm.
be like the outer shell.
Mm-hmm.
Often anger is protecting us, and sometimes it's protecting sadness or something more vulnerable. Because anger, in a way, is the least vulnerable to feel. Interestingly, like anger is more societally accepted than like total excitement, right? Like imagine, someone's just like screaming with glee and delight. You're like, what is wrong with that person, right? It's kind of sad reality.
People think they're manic or whatever. Like, but it's a funny.
Yeah.
You remember that Friends? I don't know if you watched Friends. Did you watch Friends?
Oh yeah.
Alec Baldwin played that one role where he was like Phoebe's boyfriend, or he was just like the lights on the highway, like it was
Oh,
a traffic jam, and he's like, just the lights were beautiful, and like then he's talking about car lights because he was in a traffic jam, and he's
right.
like, and he's just going, he's like, this is the most wondrous moment. I just want to like, and
Like
like
the
literally
cliche of the enlightened person who
he
sees
wasn't even
awe and
enlightened. It was
wonder
just
in
so
everything.
happy,
Yeah.
and and like nobody could handle it.
Right. It's just
Right.
pure
They've actually there's a
judgment.
funny bunch of interesting friends on that thing. There's Freddie Prinze was a guest one where he was this like sensitive nanny, and it made Ross very uncomfortable, and because it was, but then they like started to dig into it, and it was like because Ross he's sensitive, but he wasn't allowed to be sensitive.
Judges
Like
himself. Yeah.
yeah, it was a
That's
funny.
interesting. There's a sort of theme that's I notice keeps coming to mind that we haven't really addressed around talking about feelings and
Mm-hmm.
expressing them like at work because a lot of this stuff is super useful and you could do if you're a founder or anyone listening like sort of in private, right? Feel your feelings, process. I would say most work cultures have a very narrow band of what feelings are acceptable to show and
Mm-hmm.
express. There's also gender bias here, from my experience. And I think that's an interesting discussion as well. It's like, what's the value of welcoming feelings at work?
Yep.
And I think a lot of leaders are scared that it becomes chaotic or distracting or like, no,
Yep.
we need to be serious, we need to focus, and we need to perform. And from my experience, cultures that start to welcome feelings, they actually resolve things, to your point earlier, much more quickly.
Yep.
People feel more fully seen and alive. They make decisions faster. Um, and, the whole like disagree and commit, like people get really frustrated when that doesn't happen. It's usually because people haven't fully been able to express their feelings around the
Right.
idea. So they're kind of stuck holding on to this. Um,
Well, and it's interesting. I think the thing that tends to create without leadership, first of all, that acknowledges it, the feelings are always there, whether you say them or not. And I say that to all my leaders. Like they're, and the second you say that to someone, they kind of go, "Oh yeah, you're totally right." Like you're not controlling how they're actually feeling. Whether they share it or not, it's there.
Well, we can pretend they're
Yeah, we can
not,
all pretend that
like,
it's
oh,
not
what's that?
there.
There's no elephant in this room. What are you talking about? It's all
And
just logical and rational.
and so that's one thing I always say. But then the other thing that I think is really valuable in this orientation is, to this whole episode's point, the thing that I think that creates the drama in the workplace and all the messiness that people are trying to avoid is the resistance to all of it.
Mm.
Is people trying to avoid the like,
Yes.
well, no, don't cry, or this person cried, and that's not, versus if you actually just go like, I've done it many times as a leader, and the leader has to kind of do it, I think, of like, hey guys, we're gonna like go off on this client in this room for 20 minutes, and we're gonna like be mad about this, and then we're gonna move through, and everyone's kind of like, okay, great. And I think so when it's not created that space, it's still there. It bleeds out,
Yeah, it
and
leaks
then
out in unhealthy ways, causes workplace
Yeah, and then everyone's
drama.
resisting it and trying to manage it, and that's, I think it's all the management around the emotions. It's not the emotions themselves, right? But the sort of management of them that creates the issues.
Yeah, I think most of us know that like yeah, conflict is going to happen, including at work, right? It's a group of human beings try to accomplish things together. They're going to have disagreements. They're going to have different, value styles. So, if we pretend there's no conflict or try to like sweep it away, it's going to leak out in different ways. And then like trying to resolve conflict without allowing feelings, it's kind of an insane act because it's the feelings that are really creating it. It's like
Right.
um, so, to your point earlier, yeah, allowing the feelings, allowing them to be expressed. If you really like listen to someone that you're in conflict with, and like, I'm really angry, about this thing that you did, and I feel sad, and you truly listen and see them, like that is what actually resolves it, versus the logical, sort of
Getting an
resolution.
answer. Yeah, and everyone's been on the other side of receiving a logical answer and still feeling bad about it. And everyone's been on the other side of like, I didn't get an answer. We didn't actually a resolution, but I feel so much better about this. And I think that's a common thing. And I would say as a leader, again, I've led one company and built lots of these companies.
Yeah,
The second you make it okay, and the easy way to make it okay is you just say it. I like, oh, I've
yeah,
noticed
or
I'm feeling.
model it.
That's what I mean. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
model it. You just say, I'm feeling a little scared today. I notice I'm feeling a little nervous about this, or man, I'm feeling frustrated by this. And again,
The-
frustration, interestingly for men, I think is much more common in the workplace to say it and it's accepted versus I feel sad, man. I'm like
Oh,
disappointed by this.
you just reminded me. I heard this phrase. I can't remember who from that. It really stuck with me. That stress is the white collar word for fear. I
I like
love
that.
that because so many it's like it's
I'm
okay to be
stressed
stressed.
out.
It's
Yeah.
almost like a badge of honor. I'm so busy and so stressed. Oh, I must be doing it right. You're just scared.
Yeah.
And even just recognizing that, like, what do you mean you're scared? Like, and it's amazing how many times when clients show up, with this, they're really stressed. I'm like, oh, I hear that you're scared. Just like recognizing, allowing themselves to be scared without having to fix it, right? Because they think, oh, I'm scared, this is a problem. And they're spending
Right.
so much energy, your point earlier around like, being sort of de facto president of all these different companies, keeping yourself busy. We organize our entire lives to avoid feeling certain feelings,
Right.
which
To
is
resist.
nutty if you when you see that you're like, oh
Right.
my God, how much of my life have I organized just to not feel sad or scared or angry or excited or joyful, or shame. So it's like a superpower. It's like totally liberating when you can feel and welcome all the feelings. Suddenly you can just make choices based on what you want, right? You feel much more clear. And I think I might have said this in the last episode, but it bears repeating. It's kind of wild when you really recognize it's just a bunch of physical sensations that you don't want to
Right.
experience.
Right.
It's like most people's lives are limited by which physical sensations they're willing to be with.
Yeah. It's
It's
crazy.
and I like the gym. You used it, you alluded to it a few times as a metaphor. It's like we recognize that if we want to get stronger, we have to lift kind of an uncomfortable amount of weight, and you
Right. And
definitely
feel a
feel
burn.
something, a
Feel the burn.
burn. Yeah, and then that makes us stronger. So I like thinking, a lot of founders like that metaphor of like, okay, you're in the emotion gym. So like go get a little more scared.
Right.
Maybe you need to have this conversation that scares you. Okay, oh, I'm exercising my ability, my capacity to
Right.
be with fear so that it grows and I can be with more and more fear, which makes me more and more powerful. And fear is just one example.
Yeah. I think that's a great place to end. Get in the emotional gym.
Yeah.
I feel like if Andrew were here, he would say, we got to ask people who ever listened to these two episodes, like, send us a message. Was this helpful, interesting? Challenge us to, like, where does it not make sense or not resonate? Because I think this is a really good topic. Again, I've been on both sides of it. And it's like, I remember being on one side of it being like, this is all nonsense and bullshit. And now I'm like a true believer. And it's like a
Mhm.
funny, that transition. I think experientially is obviously the best way to do it.
Yeah.
But I think that it
Just,
takes a
just
little
to,
convincing at first.
to double down on the metaphor, Like, I think expanding your capacity to be with more and more intense feelings is one of the most important and least valued or understood vectors of growing as a leader and entrepreneur. Like the
Yeah.
whole, if you think of your startup as your emotion gym, like, how much can you lean into, okay, welcome fear. Let me go into scary situations. Let me go into, sadness, and like really imagine the startup feeling. Let me imagine my startup failing and feel the heartbreak and
Right.
shame. And I'm just expanding my capacity to be with those feelings, and will make you a stronger and better leader.
All right. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, it was fun. Till next time.
All right. Bye, everyone.